In October of 1518, the tales of the adventurous pilot Anton de Alaminos, who had sailed with Ponce de Leon to Florida in search of the Fountain of Youth, and with Cordova and Grijalva on their explorations of the Gulf Coast and the Yucatan Peninsula, had made it to Francisco Garay, the governor of Jamaica. Garay was a former companion of Christopher Columbus on his second voyage. Garay had obtained a great deal of wealth and was more desirous of becoming a conqueror of a new province. He listened intently to the stories of Alaminos and was persuaded to fund an expedition in the attempt to arrive ahead of Cortes and establish a settlement. By November 1518, Cortes had already set sail for the Yucatan Peninsula, while Garay was still attempting to finance an expedition himself. If Garay's crew could arrive ahead of Cortes, he could establish a claim and share in the wealth of the Aztecs. At the time, Jamaica and the Indies were under the jurisdiction of the Order of St. Jerome and had been given full authority by the King of Spain. Garay organized the expedition with the permission of the order and was dispatched 4 vessels under the command of Alonso Alvarez de Pineda. In the summer of 1519, Pineda and Alaminos set sail. Their express orders were not known, but according to the report issued by Garay to the king a year later, it was to explore and discover the long-sought-for Strait of Annan and Northwest Passage to China and India to establish a western trade route with those countries in the Far East. However, the goal in Garay's mind was to establish a settlement and therefore a claim to the wealth of the Aztec Empire. Pineda and Alaminos sailed north past Cuba and found themselves in the vicinity of the Pensacola Bay, where they sailed along the Gulf Coast, mapping and notating all that they encountered. By August 1519, Pineda had arrived in Veracruz, discovering that Cortes had already arrived and set up a civil government at Villarico de Veracruz. Pineda sent ashore a party of 4, which included a notary public and 3 witnesses, to serve Cortes with the official notice on behalf of Garay. This was to advise him that Garay was taking formal possession of the land that was being discovered by him, Cortes, and his intention to establish settlements. Long story short, Cortes said no and took the notary and the witnesses prisoner. He then sent word to Pineda to come ashore and show Cortes proof of their claim by order of the king. Pineda did not have that proof. They only had the permission of the Order of St. Jerome. After several days, Cortes, tired of waiting, made the notary and his companions exchange clothes with his soldiers. The soldiers went to the beach and signaled the ship for help. Pineda sent a small boat with 12 soldiers ashore to rescue the notary and the witnesses. And as soon as 4 of the 12 set foot on shore, they were taken captive by Cortes. The other 8 escaped back to the ship, and they sailed north on their journey home. They did not stop until they reached a very large river north of Panuco. The little fleet put in at the mouth of this river and began to careen the vessels, which took them about 40 days. Careening is when you turn the ship against the current in order to scrape the barnacles off the bottom. While this task was being done, they explored all the land on both sides of the river for about 18 miles. According to Garay's report, it was said that there were was a very large town and at least 40 Indian pueblos on either side of the river. In the report, it stated that the land was very healthy, fertile, and peaceful. He also declared that there was much gold, indicated by the ornaments worn by the Indians, and that they were tranquil and kind and inclined to become Christians. There is another story that states that Pineda's crew was attacked by the Indians, and Pineda himself was killed there. But Gurre's report indicated that Pineda and his men returned safely to Jamaica and were very anxious to return to the Rio Grande because they had given their word and wanted the Indians to trust them. There were 6 rivers mentioned, but only 2 rivers were actually named by Pineda between Pensacola Bay and Veracruz. One was Rio del Espiritu Santo, which is most likely the Mississippi River, and the Panuco River. So this very large river in between them is most likely the Rio Grande. The evidence for this assumption is that he describes the unnamed river as being about 30 leagues north of the Panuco River, which is approximately 90 miles. The Rio Grande is exactly 90 miles north of the Panuco River, which is just north of what is now modern-day Veracruz, Mexico. There's also evidence of a very large Indian presence at the mouth of the Rio Grande. Pineda and his men traded with the Indians there and established the very first, albeit temporary, Spanish settlement at the mouth of the Rio Grande River, what is now the great state of Texas. Which story is true? I'm not sure. I kind of lean toward the first story, but you decide and let me know in the comments. Did Pineda die in Texas, or did he make it back to Jamaica? Either way, we have no record of Alonso Alvarez de Pineda ever going back to Texas. However, he is credited with discovering the Rio de las Palmas, or the Rio Grande River, and therefore was the first European to set foot on what would become Texas. It is not clear what Indian tribe it was that Pineda encountered, but I believe it was the Coahuiltecan, and that they inhabited northern Mexico and the Rio Grande Valley. I hope you enjoyed this story of Alonso Alvarez de Pineda and how he mapped the Gulf coastline and established the first settlement in Texas. This accomplishment would lead to further incursions into the Texas frontier and the establishment of other settlements and missions, one being San Antonio de Valero, or better known as the Alamo. If you find value in this content, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. And until next time, God bless Texas, y'all.